Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our Etho webinar series. We're just going to wait a couple of seconds here for people to drop in. So, hope everyone is having a wonderful day today, and we are really looking forward to diving into a topic with you that I think is going to be really interesting, certainly with some buzzwords that are coming about. So, my name is Matt Gainsford. I am a senior consultant here with Titus Talent Strategies, and we're going to be kicking things off in a moment. So, yeah, just hang tight and give us a couple of seconds. Okay, wonderful. We've seen lots of people dropping into the webinar here. So again, my name is Matt Gainsford. I am a senior consultant here with Titus, and welcome to the last and possibly even the most intriguing of our current webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about the truth behind quiet quitting. So if you're able to make it out to either our first or second sessions, then welcome back. If you're new here, I just wanted to let you know that we are going to currently be running this webinar in Etho. Ether is our tool to utilize to measure the performance and engagement, and look really at kind of what's able to happen with every single employee. So if you're familiar with Ether, if you've heard a little bit about it, really our mission is to provide that kind of phase two from the hiring process. It's an all-in-one platform to manage your people, your projects, the progress that you're taking, and really making the most of meetings. In today's webinar, we're going to be more focused on the people and performance aspect as we explore quiet quitting. We do want this to be an interactive webinar, so please interrupt us, leave comments and questions in the chat, and we'll address those. We love it. We love hearing from you, and we want to know what's on your mind and how we can best answer that. So we'd love to answer all of your questions along the way, and if we do run out of time, we promise that we will follow up on you, get you those answers that we're looking for. So again, my name is Matt Gainsford, and today's speakers that we have the pleasure of hearing from are going to be Becca Gum, our Strategic Partnerships Manager here at Titus. We have the honor of having Edgar Jones, the Vice President of Coaching and Performance Scoring. And we also have Jeff Boucher, our Senior Director over here, one of our Senior Directors at Titus Talent, who you're going to be loving to hear from. So, quiet quitting. You may have heard of that. Quiet quitting has become really more of a buzzword over the last few months, and behind every buzzword, there's a story. But the truth is, quiet quitting really isn't new. It's the latest name for a long time problem, employee disengagement. Since the pandemic, an increasing number of workers have grown tired of really not getting the recognition and compensation for putting in extra hours and effort. But we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into really what's going on behind the scenes, whether it's a people problem, whether there are things that we can be doing as organizations to help engage and support our individuals and our team members better. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking over. So Edgar, can you get us started by talking about the root causes of quiet quitting and kind of lifting the lid on what we're looking at here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Well, first, organizations tend to fixate on productivity and then policing of the workforce. And you just talked about it earlier. I mean, this is not anything new. It's been around for quite some time. People not only do this at their job, but they do this in their personal lives. Think about a couple that's been with each other for a long period of time and everything seems great. And then the kids graduate from high school and they get a divorce. And you find out from one of the individuals that, they were not being heard. They felt like their voice was not valued. So they end up, separating. This actually happens in sports as well. I've experienced this in a locker room. I've been a part of an organization where the players felt like their feedback was not important. And when they gave feedback, there was nothing done about it. So they just check in, do their jobs and go home. Gallup actually did a study and showed that in 2022, Gen Z and younger millennials had the lowest engagement at 31%. So this just shows like there's a why behind the way. There's something that's been leading up to this. And what I'm going to talk about is the 5 reasons your company has quiet quitters. The first one, managers have little to no training. School does not prepare us on how to lead. And as you go throughout school and you get to college, you're taught about how to do a good skill, to be good at your skill and do a job. And then when you leave college, you graduate, you get that job, you do really, really well, you get promoted. And when you get promoted, there's an increase in pay, but then also you're in a position now where you have to lead people. And what organizations expect out of the managers is to duplicate that same success and those methods and those approaches. And that's not fair, number one, to the manager nor the team. So what organizations need to do is put a plan into place, put a system into place that teaches managers on how to engage with the individuals on their team to bring out their unique gifts, their capabilities, and their traits so they can continue to flourish. Number two, you have unclear performance objectives. People need to know exactly how to win at their jobs. This is important because it gives guidance, it gives a direction to the team and the individual. And if you don't do this over time, what happens is people get confused. We get to the point they're quiet quitting. They're confused on their responsibilities and what they should be doing. They start to become less productive, and this affects the individual, but also this affects your organization as well. So you want to be able to set goals that you both can agree on. There's nothing worse than for someone setting goals for you that you had no input on. So being able to set goals that you both can agree on, and then over time, being able to chart the growth, being able to look for how that individual has improved. Number three, you have the right people in the wrong seats. This can be a challenge. You hired the right person, their skills, their experience, what they've done was something that you were interested in, your organization was interested in. And not only that, but they share your core values. But over time, what happens is if I'm not doing check-ins, if we're not discussing progress, if I'm not having those conversations, you get to this point. And what happens is either the seat is too big for them, and they start to become over time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the drive, which can affect your profit margin. They start to become overwhelmed, or they get to the point they don't have the capacity to do the job. Number two is they probably have outgrown their seat. They start to get bored. They start to get bored. They start to look for more work. They're looking to be challenged, and you know that they're capable of more. And when you have that system into place and you're checking in with that individual and you're discussing the progress and having those conversations, what typically should happen is we have the right person in the right seat, the right person in the right seat. And every once in a while, you may run into this situation. Number four, they're limited on growth opportunities. When you don't have when there's a lack of advancement and opportunities, this makes the individual not engage, and they start looking for a new job. So you want to think about when you hire someone, we just don't want to hire them for the seat that they're in, but we're thinking about down the road, down the future. And when I talk to different individuals, this looks different for each person. Some individuals want to be able to increase their ability to dive in other aspects of the company. Some individuals just want to change their seat in itself. They want to sit in a different seat, a different role. Regardless, a system needs to be put into place where people can grow, they can develop, and they can thrive. And you should have a learning cycle that individuals can learn, they can live, and they can lead. They're learning something new, they can live that out, and they can lead in a way that makes other people interested in what they're doing. I know trust is extremely important as well. You got to have trust. And if you don't have trust, then that's not a good situation. So Becca, let's talk about the importance of trust.
Hello, everybody. Trust is extremely important in this whole idea of quiet quitting. If you can identify a quiet quitter, I can tell you right now, a top reason is a lot of times their disengagement is due to a lack of trust of their leaders. And so, just like Edgar was saying earlier, that people that get divorced, usually those issues happen a long time before that happens. And so building a foundation before you even get to the point of distrust is what I would recommend. I would say always look to the leader first if you're identifying what to do with the quiet quitter. One of the things that you can really do is actually set a good foundation, and this can be prevented within the first 3 to 6 months of employment. So in a situation where there is trust lost, I would, again, always examine the leader that's in the working relationship first. The truth is the issue can be prevented Just by using tools like, for example, like DISC or Hogan or the predictive index, this often comes with maybe relationship or manager guides that can really be powerful tools if you follow those and honor those. But the first thing you should do as a leader is really know who the person is that you are leading, and kind of provide the honor and respect that you would want. I think a lot of times people are looking to gain respect with the people that directly report to them. And so they get mixed up and think that respect is more showing assertiveness or kind of trying to establish dominance. But I would say that we need to think of respect as kind of you give respect by actually building trust with your people. There's like an old saying that says people don't care how much you know until you know how much you care. Very, very true still today, very powerful. That's what I would say. Just examine yourself first. The next we want to talk about is the effects of quiet quitting. Honestly, we all know quiet quitting, and it's obvious that not only does it cause low productivity, but quiet quitting affects a company's bottom line more than they realize as well. So the few things that you would want to look at in the effects of quiet quitting is on performance. This can cause dissatisfaction due to disengagement. Engaged teams are more profitable. So dissatisfaction due to disengagement. According to a recent Gallup workplace survey, quiet quitting has cost the global economy $7.8 trillion in lost productivity. The engaged teams are more profitable. Teams with low engagement see turnaround rates of over 18 to 43% higher than those that are engaged. And obviously this is a problem because it's expensive and time consuming to hire and train new employees. Let's see, lower engagement causes higher turnover. In response to a declining overall productivity, we are seeing it all over. Companies are signaling layoffs, and many had been laid off. So layoffs and turnover are detrimental to both workers and employers. In addition to the damage that it can do to your culture and reputation, the cost of one employee being laid off is equal to 200% of the employee's salary, which is a lot. Let's see, next slide is managers and employees feel disconnected. So here's a real problem, is that 1 in 3 managers describe themselves as emotionally or psychologically describe themselves as emotionally and psychologically disconnected to their work, which is obviously a major problem because this is the group of people we actually want to engage our staff, and these are the ones that are suffering the most. And then the next thing we want to talk about here is really just the disconnect between what managers think they're providing and what employees actually feel that they're receiving, which is a huge gap. I mean, if we are really truly defining the seed, I think Edgar touched on this before, we know clearly the expectations, but here, managers may believe that they're providing enough support, yet their direct reports may not agree. For instance, almost 2/3 of managers believe they are doing a good job acknowledging their subordinates' contributions, but only 1/3 of workers strongly agree that their good work is recognized. Recognition helps employees see their company's values, see that their company values them and their contributions to success of their team and company overall. If they don't feel this, they quickly become disengaged and lower their performance. I'm sure everybody can very much relate to this. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about is burnout, because this is something else that I think our leaders can really prevent before it happens. So quiet quitting also leaves an impact on coworkers and teammates. So slacking off at work that can cause rifts between employees, and some are left to compensate for others. We've all seen that. This in turn fuels a toxic workplace, and it can further exacerbate employee dissatisfaction. This is why things like setting clear expectations in the role. Here at Titus, we have a top 5, so there is no question if we are not missing our goals, because what can be confusing is when you don't have clarity, managers actually don't know, what to actually measure their people on. And so therefore they can insert their own expectations on what this should be. So clear expectations on both sides are extremely important for help with burnout. Also, it's really, really important to be aware that right now there is a kind of a, I would say people are the topic of hustle culture, and it's turning into a really toxic topic. And many companies just really need to know that people are reprioritizing work. And I think this is an opportunity for leaders to make sure that their people are getting adequate rest so that they're not becoming burnt out. So I know, Jeff, you have a few more thoughts on this, but I would love to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Becca. How to re-engage quiet quitters. And I think with many things, especially this, it starts with communication. And let me start by saying I hate the term quiet quitters. I loathe it. I abhor it. I think it was invented by managers ill-equipped to manage and lead. I actually like to think of someone sitting in front of their manager and reviewing the performance of their team and saying, Becca had 140% and Edgar had 130% and Jeff had 100%. Like, why do you suspect that happens? And this manager was just like, I don't know. I guess once Jeff achieves the goal we set out for him, he just stops. He just stops working because that manager didn't understand why someone wouldn't go above and beyond when everyone else is. And that's back to re-engaging. And if I have to focus on this phrase I hate of quiet quitting, I'm going to focus on the quiet parts. Silence, no communication. You have to fight fire with water. If they're quiet, your managers need to get loud. Consistent communication and clarity is what they're looking for. And if your managers can't do that, then they're not equipped to lead. Once your managers are given the tools, let's say we coach them up and they know how to communicate, what are they going to talk about? Some of the things that Edgar and Becca both have brought up before, growth opportunities. Remember, I hate labeling someone that is achieving 100% of their goals as a quiet quitter. I hate it. But does this person understand the next step in their career path? And does the expectation of that include above and beyond communication back and forth with manager and employee? The performance objectives that we talked about, are they visible? Can you see how you're stacking up against them? Can both the manager and the employee have transparent visibility over that and track the progress towards it? How are your people feeling? Becca just talked about burnout. Can your managers spot burnout? Do they know what levers to pull in order to see burnout coming before it's there? Are they equipped to see it? And as with all of these, are you having these conversations regularly? Are you tracking and documenting what you're talking about so you can go back and reference things in the future and build off of that? You have to re-engage through communication. How are you equipping your managers to lead? What tools or training are you providing them so that they can manage the performance and the expectations? Someone that has the ability to hold people accountable and have the tough conversations, you need to empower them to discern the difference between indifference, disengagement, and low performance. And in that triangle, you're going to identify quiet quitters. Are your people in the right seats? Edgar talked about that. And I think as it relates to quiet quitting, I think this is a really important component. So here at Titus, we love to look at the whole person. What does that mean, the whole person? Well, it means we spend an awful lot of time looking at the skills of an individual. And while that's crazy important, there are other things to consider. So the skills is the resume. The technical skills they bring to the table. There's values. Is there value alignment between the employer and the employee. And we'll talk about that in a second. And lastly, it's the behaviors, how someone is naturally wired to work. When we place candidates at Titus, when we place our candidates with our partners and we issue a guarantee for the performance for 365 days from their start date, you better believe that we're looking at more than just their resume. The first thing, the absolute first thing we're going to do is we're going to understand what behaviors they need to be successful in their role. We're going to go out to hiring managers. What's important to you? We're going to assess other top performers and identify patterns. And we're going to put all of that together and produce a benchmark, this behavioral profile. And that doesn't mean that someone that doesn't have that profile can't be successful in the role. But as it relates to quiet quitting, what it does mean is that it equates how much a person may have to modify to be successful in the role. So it's not foolish to think that you may have someone sitting in a seat who is modifying their behavior so much to achieve their goals that once they've achieved them, they didn't quit. They've simply passed out from exhaustion. Is that really the right seat for them? Can you re-engage this person by finding a better seat? Values, we talked about value alignment. What's meaningful, what's valuable to them, and do they have access to do it with you? It's what's important for your employee needs to be important for the employer. Offering enrichment opportunities, and organizations must fundamentally change the way they think about work, proving that their people come first. They can start by creating access to continued development and internal job opportunities and making sure that that path is clear on what it takes to get there. Increased communication and status on that path is super critical. Give recognition and reward often. I think this boils down to clarity and visibility again, and it's sad to admit that I've prepared for quarterly conversations and had to think back, what did my employees, how were they successful this last quarter? Because I didn't document it. I didn't have a tool to understand what they had accomplished. And I missed opportunities throughout that quarter to really engage and recognize those. This doesn't have to be every day or all the time, but when an employee has truly done great work, they need to be seen as reliable. They need to be seen as made to have made the road a little bit easier. They need to be told, and it's free, and it does wonders for your culture as well as engagement. Finding out what your employees really enjoy. When employees enjoy their work, they're more productive, they're more engaged. You need to ensure that someone in the organization, managers, someone are carving out time to sit with your employees and find out what's important to them. I personally think that skip level meetings or 1-over-1 meetings are a great opportunity to find out what's important to your employees. Do they like to volunteer? As an example, perhaps there are nonprofits within the organization that could make their work more satisfying. But it doesn't necessarily mean it has to relate to work. My love of concerts and live music has no practical application in my role, but knowing that my boss knows that I value it and he brings it up from time to time, that drives my engagement, and that's really hard to replace. And lastly, establish employee well-being. Returning to the example of the person who's constantly modifying their behavior, who just lives in a place outside of their comfort zone relative to work. This person is 100% at risk of burnout. The red flags should be flying. If you're not measuring it, if you can't see it, then you're not really handling employee well-being at your work. And it's recognizing that, and it's creating a plan that will help establish healthy workforce, healthy boundaries with your job. And this is way more than just surveying the employees, but it's taking that data, it's taking that results, being transparent with it, showing what the results said, what you're going to do about it, and then you got to go do it.
Yeah, that was great, Jeff. I loved all of those little nuggets of wisdom. And the next thing we want to talk about is, really when to let go of quiet quitters. So you really, when you're considering this, you really need to ask yourself, what are they there for? What are they really there for? Are your expectations of them actually clear and fair? So it goes into building clarity in the role and expectations, and just establishing that two-way conversation from the beginning. And then also, having compassion for today's worker, and maybe being okay with some people really just kind of saying no to hustle culture. And that also, again, with clarity, it's really about, is this person actually achieving the objectives for the role? If they're achieving the objectives for the role, I would say they should be rewarded on that. Another thing is, just culturally, their values align with your company. These are all things that you can kind of really define before you actually put the person in the seat, but really making sure that, going through, does this person values align? That can really send somebody out. And if you choose, or if you just figure out that it's possible that they don't, it might be time to just have a conversation about, do they actually want to move on? But again, it's really about what part does coaching play within this, all of this.
Yeah.
So training leaders for employee engagement. I mean, it really starts there. Let's prevent, letting go of quiet quitters way before it gets to that point. And, one of the things that needs to happen is a conversation needs to happen before this ever comes to the point. There should be a performance improvement plan, of course, before anything comes to this point. And sometimes quiet quitters, it's really not about performance, but it's just about also the employees' well-being and compassion. If you don't feel like their values are aligned with your company, maybe it really is time to have a compassionate conversation with them about their next steps in life. But if your leaders are trained for employee engagement, then this shouldn't really be an issue. And Edgar, feel free to jump in at any time. Yeah.
No, Becca, you hitting some some great points. Before we talk about when to let go of a quiet quitter, I think there should always be a self-examination of myself, in my role that I'm sitting in, and how have I done, and then being able to have people around you that's going to give you honest feedback to say, hey, Edgar, like, you have not done a good job of leading this person. So like, before we go that route, like, let's examine yourself. And then, in this day and age, man, just the compassion, empathy, understanding that people are in different seasons of their lives, and different things take place. And when you're having those frequent conversations, you never know. You may open up the door and find out that individual has something going on in their personal life that's been affecting the professional side of it. So just having a conversation and being intentional, and again, doing some reflection of yourself before we get to the point of letting individuals go.
Yeah, perfect. And so let's see. I know that if we use this tool called Etho, and there is a way for us to, as Titus, we actually use that tool as well. And within that tool, you're able to basically rate meetings. Rating meetings, the element of feedback. That what the essence of this is that it's really opening your coaching, it really inviting a two-way conversation within your coaching. If you're able to give and receive feedback, it really, in our organization, we want to be able to receive feedback from maybe the a lowest person in our company, or lowest ranked person in our company, all the way up to executive level. So I think if you can cultivate that culture, that's going to really help somebody feel like their voice actually matters. And then the next slide is behaviors are typically symptoms of something going on, like Edgar said. But Etho can really help you find them. So I don't know if Edgar wants to take this one. He is our Etho guru over here.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Becca. So, Again, it's we talk a lot about coaching, and for a manager to be able, and when we talk about managing, they're both needed. It's just at what time do I need to put my manager hat on? Do I need to put really like my leadership hat on? But being able to have a coach on the ethos side, that not only you can talk to about some of the things that's going on, but the power of Etho is it gives a coach like me insight. So I can look at a performance review that probably took place last quarter and say, hey, Becca, you talked to Jeff about career pathing. Have you followed up with them and had that conversation? Have you thought about like what that looks like, right? Like, you know how much time that saves? Like, rather than being like, hey, Becca, like, what's going on with Jeff? Like, now I'm using the application to help me insert and surgically be able to come in and coach specifically to what the issue is, what the problem may be. And that saves a lot of time and it saves you a lot of money as well.
That's great. And the next slide says, creating a culture of committed champions is more than possible with the right mindset, metrics, and follow through. Quiet quitters, the people who manage them and the organizations they work for don't have to suffer in silence. Creating a culture of committed champions and top performers is more than possible. And no matter the size of your organization, with the right mindset, metrics, and follow through, you can coach the quietest of quitters into committed champions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to hear from everybody today. And that kind of sense of vulnerability that we foster with our people is so important in the way that we're able to connect with them on the process, the performance management, all of those different things. So, we want to thank you today for giving us 30 minutes of your time, for taking the time to sit with us. If you'd like to explore any of the other content that we have on any of our Etho series so far, check out our YouTube channel. We're going to have all 3 parts of our series posted on there shortly. And then if you're curious about the platform that we have run this on, we've talked a lot about Etho so far. Feel free, use the QR code. We're going to leave this up for a little bit here. Come and sign up for a demo, see Etho in action, figure out what this really could do for your organization, your people, everybody involved in this process here. We are offering this for free up until, I believe, up until 2023, and would love to have a chat with you about this. So if you have something to implement before the end of before the business and the new year, check it out. Start the new year really strong off with Etho here. So we've got a dedicated team that can teach you how to maximize this and really kind of integrate this software to meet a lot of your business needs. But I know we're kind of really just running over a little bit of time here, but we do want to make some room for any questions that any of you had. I know this is a very moving and very important topic. So thank you again. Seeing we have any questions popping in here.
What do we have, Matt? What questions do we have? Is there any way we can prepare our managers to avoid quiet quitting? That's a really good question. It always starts at the top. So like the individuals at the top level being able to be intentional with their check-ins with the managers and find out currently how are they feeling, like how they're feeling at their position that they're in. And the top level should be doing that part of checking in with the managers and having those conversations. And hopefully by doing that, and when you do that, actually, it's no different from a manager having the conversations with the people that they're leading and managing. If the leadership team is doing it at the top level, they can be able to do that in a way that hopefully you can get ahead of this before a manager ends up going down this road.
Wonderful. Thank you, Edgar. We got another question here. Do you have any tips on how to avoid burnout without decreasing productivity?
I would have a lot of ideas on that question. I think that avoiding burnout does really start with how you're actually recruiting your people for your company. Really, things like, I've touched on this before, but do their values align with yours, with your company's values? Are your values clearly defined? Do you actually mean your values? Those are things I would be asking myself. And that avoids out in lots of different ways. Another thing is defining clarity in the role. I mean, what are your expectations of this role? Are they actually good expectations? Are they realistic? And does the employee know what those are and agree? And then it's really encouraging rest. Actually, I was just recently reading a book that said statistically, you know, after you're working about 55 hours a week, the difference you make is negligible. So I think that, you know, just encouraging rest is another way to you know, avoid this, making sure the person's in the right seat as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Becca. Had another question drop in. This is a really interesting question here, but how do you think quiet quitting is such a prominent topic? Do you think this has always existed, or is just another name? Maybe something like slacking, or is this really a new phenomenon?
Well, I can jump in here. I think it's always happened. And I think it has been disguised as disengagement. And I think the reasons for disengagement, or the symptoms, are lack of management training. So I think all the way up to the first question that Edgar talked about, in training your managers how to completely lead people, how to understand when individuals are achieving their performance objectives, when they're not achieving their performance objectives, when they're at risk for burnout, how to attach impact of the organization down to their role. I think it's to me, it all boils into the disengagement piece. I guess how you came off mute. Were you gonna chime in here?
Yeah, no, it's just you know, back to what I said earlier, it's been around for quite some time, and it's just it's something that attracts people's attention, you know. And I challenge individuals in a leadership role that when we talk about, and I'm like you, the word quiet quitting, I don't want to even say it, but we're here and I have to say it. Quiet quitting, like, we should talk about quiet leading as well, right? Like, what on the leadership side did I did not do well, being able to do some reflection of myself as a leadership team. You know, I go back and I think about sports. I think about teams that's been bad over a long period of time. Typically what happens is they're always pointing the finger at the people on the front line. They're not doing their job. They're not making the tackles. The coaches are not coaching how they need to. But from a leadership standpoint of like the owners and the GMs, like them being able to be accountable for themselves and say, hey, like, this has kind of been trickling down. So let me examine myself before we just talk about another linebacker I want to draft and how my coach hadn't been coaching. Like, have I been giving that individual and the team the things that they need to be successful? Have I been training my coaches on just how to better understand the players and the people that's a part of that team? Being able to be accountable for yourselves, be accountable for yourself first before we start to look at like what's going on with everyone else.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Edgar. Okay, so we have another one that's dropped in here. When performance is a problem, would you recommend and employees? I'm going to read that one again. So when performance is a problem, would you recommend a process that works for both managers and employees?
Yeah, I can jump in here. When I think you have to have a double-edged sword when you're talking about performance issues for both the employee and the manager. I don't see the question written out here, but I do believe, to the earlier point, that quiet quitting has been an established issue disguised as disengagement. But I do think that as of late, people are creating healthier boundaries around work-life balance. And to my earlier point about establishing open lines of communication and transparency and understanding where those boundaries exist and providing a path, manager providing a path to achieve 100% of those performance objectives is equally as critical as your employee having the tools and skills to complete those performance objectives too. And I hope that answered. I didn't quite capture the whole question. I didn't see it read, but I hope that answers something.
Perfect. Yeah, we got a really interesting one that's come in here as well. And this kind of, not that we want to harken back to the days of the pandemic, but I think the effect that this has really had on businesses and on individuals as a whole. This is a really pertinent question, but do you think that COVID raised awareness about work-life balance and that C-suite leaders are being slow to realize that this is more of an employee priority?
Yeah, I think that I love that I got this question is from somebody that I know, and I'm glad that they're here anyway. I just wanted to shout you out a little bit, but I do think that COVID, it was like a passing of the baton, I think, in mindset, where I think people were realizing, when they were able to sit home for months that, maybe work-life balance is more important to them. And companies honestly were scrambling during that time. So the fact that maybe C-suite leaders might have been slow to realize this, I think had a really good reason to not necessarily pick up on that as quickly as possible. I also think that, I think that it's again, a mind shift switch. I think that it was a blessing and a curse for us to go through that reevaluation. And I think that, I do think that, I think that it was giving people more of a voice to actually talk about it, as opposed to in the past where they may not have felt that they had a choice.
Wonderful. Thank you, Becca. We've got another question here, which it says, how can we avoid trust issues? Now, I don't know. I'd love to take a stab at answering this one, because this is an area I think is really, really important and very close to, certainly to my heart, when it comes to some of the management aspects of things, and really that front line of being able to develop vulnerability with the people that you work with, the people that you coach, or the people that you manage. And a big part of avoiding those trust issues is really, what are we seen to be doing, or what are we seen to be following through from as a management team? Is our yes, are we doing what we say we're going to do? And do we really engage with what our people, our employees, our team members are actually saying, and give them an effective, I guess, kind of outworking of seeing those results or seeing that feedback in action? So that could take place within any kind of format. Certainly, if you're an organization that engages in weekly one-on-one meetings where a manager will sit down with a team member, that's going to be a really key time to not just talk about what's going on in work, but also talk about what's going on in life. And to refer to Jeff's comments, what are the bands that you're seeing? What are the live events that you've been seeing? Where are you going? What's happening? What's interesting you? What capacity do you have for what's taking place right now? So a big part of that is keeping those conversations and communication lines open, and then showing that you're going to do something about it. I think that's a really key part for avoiding, so it's certainly building trust and avoiding those trust issues. So wonderful. I think we've got time for one more question here as well. That is, do you know of a system that helps train leaders to stay connected with their teams, especially when maybe you've got a manager who is learning about leadership for the first time, maybe the first time in 17 years? What systems do you have?
Etho. That's it.
All right.
It's the system that helps train leaders to stay connected with their team. In addition from that, just the coaching side of it as well.
Wonderful. Well, Edgar, Jeff, Becca, thank you again. We're going to leave the QR code just up in the window here. If you want to schedule a demo, if you want to learn a little bit more about Etho, kind of see what this is all about and how this might impact your organization, then feel free. We'd love to start that conversation with you and kind of show you a little bit about behind the scenes of really what this looks like and what this can do and how this can function. So again, thank you so much for all of the information today. Thank you for those of you that are still with us. And we are going to be posting this back up on our YouTube channel here shortly. Check out the other Etho webinars that we've hosted. It's going to be a lot of great content coming in the future. And again, thank you for joining us.